Offered an in-house training class for modelers like yourselves to come out and train. Now, we have done in the past. We're probably going to resurrect it again at some point, but that's 2.5 days of talking. So there's so many things in these decoders. So my goal here today is to give you some ideas, some thoughts, show you what's cool out there, and maybe open their mind to say, hey, maybe I want to try this out. So first off, just want to introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is George Bogatuk. I've been working with SoundTraxx now for 15 years. My prior profession was working in auto parts at a Chevy dealership, and I hated every day of my life because people were mad that their cars were broken down. It's going to cost them money they didn't plan, and somehow it was my fault that General Motors is only selling this assembly instead of the little spring that's actually broken, and somehow that was my fault. And so I was the one getting constantly yelled at. Now when I'm doing model trains, I'm basically selling people their toys. People are happy to see me, and I love it. But now, for me personally, I've been a model railroader since I was, these kids' age, and I've been enjoying it every time. So guys, seriously, take a look at this. Think about your career paths. There are careers to be made in model railroading, but you're not necessarily going to get rich. So, but you're having fun, right? So with that, I've been a model railroader since I was a kid, but one of the things I like to point out is I had a great group of people around me that taught me everything I know. So we're not born knowing how to model railroad. We come in, we say, oh man, that's cool, I want to do that. But somewhere you got to learn how to build benchwork. You have to learn how to lay track. You have to learn how to wire the track. You have to learn how to build a building and paint, decal, all that stuff. It's all skills. And so one of the things that helps me...
Could we turn this engine on?
I can get it, yeah.
Okay, great.
One of the things that helps me is that I know that electronics, digital, those are all just another part of the hobby that we want to learn. And so for me, I have people come up to me all the time and they'll say, hey, I got a stupid question. I'm saying, wait, no stupid questions. Your question is important to you to help you learn. Ask anything you need to know, and that's what I'm here for. And so I was once upon a time the other side of this, this class and things like that for various reasons. And so through the years, I've learned a lot, and so I'm here happy to share any of the information. So up front here on the tabletop, I have some cards that I'll leave here. You guys can hand out. First one is a YouTube card. This is a link to our YouTube channel. We post a lot of information on our YouTube channel, such as how do we do this, how do we do that, how do we make the lights do this or whatever. They're short, 3 to 5 minutes, talks about specific features and how to do it. Be sure you like and subscribe to the channel, and you'll get notified whenever we post new content. We do that every week. Then I'm leaving my business cards here, but I actually have 2 of them. One of them is just a straight business card, because I know a lot of you guys, and I encourage it to support the local hobby shop. But if your local hobby shop does have problems getting product, on the back of the second one is a single one-time discount code to use direct on our website. We do encourage you to use the retailers, the local shops, the online stores, because that's how those businesses stay around. But I'm gonna leave them here. And then apparently these stickers, I forgot I had them. I thought they were business cards, but apparently they're stickers. So I've handed some out. I'm gonna leave them here, hand out to the rest of your members and things like that. So you guys are welcome to have all those. And then I did leave some brochures and things like that that'll help get you familiar with the different product lines. So with that, what I'm gonna do today is, first off, I wanna start off with just talking about Blunami. Blunami is our brand new product. I wanna kind of share what it is and what you're getting when you purchase a Blunami. And then once we get done that, I'm gonna kind of go over some basic operations that are included in the decoders that can help you run your trains more realistically. What happens is we come into a layout like this, and you've got beautiful scenery, beautifully detailed scenes. We've got models that are, top notch, and then we tend to run them like slot cars. Real locomotives take, a lot of mass and a lot of time to get going, and they take time to stop, but we do have features in the decoder that can help you run them more realistically, and with a little bit of practice, it'll be like second nature, and we'll cover that in the second part of this. But like I said, I'm an operations-oriented guy, and I've never run a real locomotive, but experience with real locomotive operators and learning, and of course we live in Durango, where we have to see those nasty old steam engines running through town every day. It just breaks my heart. But so we have access to those guys, and we can feed with them. Now, when we built the Tsunami 2, we actually did have railroaders on staff that were able to feed in information. So a lot of the features are based on real locomotive operation, and we'll cover that in the second part. So first off, I want to talk about Blunami. That's a strange word, right? What does that mean? Well, our product line flagship has been Tsunami 2. It started with the original Tsunami back early in the mid-2000s and went on to about 2015, 2016. And then we upgraded and made the Tsunami 2. Now, Blunami is actually a merge of the word Bluetooth and Tsunami. So it's a Bluetooth Tsunami 2. So basically what you're getting is you're getting a Tsunami 2 decoder. Works on full DCC track voltage. Everything operates just fine. So you can purchase your Blunami decoder, run it with your Tsunami 2s all day long. Now, where you get the advantage is the Blunami actually now has that Bluetooth chip built onto the decoder that actually allows you to communicate wirelessly through your smart device, whether it be an iPhone or an iPad or an Android phone or an Android tablet. You can talk directly to the decoder. So I can come in here and I'm just going to unmute this guy and I can run the locomotive and operate using the wireless control. Now, even though I have DCC on the track, I'm using this. So one of the things, and I'll get into in a second, is address is not important because the Bluetooth chip is paired through the smart device directly to the decoder. So one of the things we run into with a lot of our mass-produced models is you have, shut up, we have a lot of, so one of the things we run into with a lot of mass-produced models, we run into a lot of members of a club, for example, that have the same locomotive number. And so you have to say, well, I'm going to do the first 2 digits, or I'm going to do the last 2 digits. You know what, with Blunami, it doesn't matter. Because you can run it on your DCC track, but once you connect to the app, the DCC track power commands are ignored. It's strictly following this. You also don't have to worry about now somebody coming in and trying to, oh, watch this, I'm going to do this. Nope, it's ignoring the DCC track. So what it's doing is just using the track for power. So that opens the door for analog DC operation. So I know you guys have a switch that you can toggle the layout back and forth. So the DC guys can now put Blunami in their locomotive and still get to be able to run it on their DC power using the app. So all the decoder needs is power. And so what that means is that if you do have Blunami, you can run it on the DCC layout using the DCC system all day long. But if the DC guys are here and you switch the layout over, you don't have to take all your stuff off the layout. You just now connect to the app. And you get all the same benefits of running a DCC system. Basically, the app is your DCC system. Now, some of the features that you get with the app. So when you first open it up, you get this screen. And you get a list of all the different locomotives that potentially are available. Now, some of these, I didn't close the app when I left the other club earlier today, so some of these are their locomotives. If he's not connected to them, it'll show up. So that's why it says not available, is because they're not in range. But right now I've got this Mopac S1460 and I've got the P42, but it's connected here. And so that's why it thinks it's over there. It's because, again, I didn't close this app, but when I close the app, I'm going to reopen it. Now the only locomotive it detects is the 1460. So we connect. There we go. Go to standard. And when you first open up, it's going to collect data. What it's doing is it's quickly reading all the CVs in the decoder to be able to make sure all the menu options in the app match whatever's been changed in the decoder since the last time it connected. So because it's a DCC decoder, you can put it on a programming track and read and program, change CVs, everything. What that's doing is it's making sure everything matches. And then once it's done, you come back to the operation screen. So here's where you have your headlight. Let's unmute for a second. Pretend you didn't see that. We have our bell, whistle, short whistle, and our direction switch, and then of course our throttle. All this is accessible right there. Now when you want to access the higher functions or any of the other functions, this little speaker icon, you pull it out, and that's where you get the menu that allows you to be able to now talk directly to all the different functions. And you'll notice they're labeled. They're not actually button numbers. So when you're using a throttle like one of these or even the NCE, you have to remember that function 9 does this, function 12 does this, and then function 25 does this. Then you have to remember how to access it on these throttles. And I'm throwing this one under the bus as well, because the NCE, I know you have to push and hold shift and then press the 0 key and then the 5, and that's function 15. If you want to do 25, it's shift and 0, and then 5. And so you have a lot more. And in this, I believe I have the function plus 1, function plus 2, and that gets you the higher functions. But it's up to you to remember which function buttons turn on which things. So a lot of people will carry a little cheat card or something like that. The app does the work for you. It's all right there. So what's even better is here's your first 14 functions. You turn it over, there's your second 14 functions. So 15 through 28. So you click up here at the top, you can toggle between the two. So using it on a smartphone, for example, it's small enough to put in your hands. You can do this with single hand, or you can walk around, operate your trains, and just, you know, kind of walk along like this. You know, operate your locomotives, single hand, work it like that. Now the other thing that's really cool about this is, I'm going to go over here and use the lights for example. Okay, the lights on our products are labeled as FX5 or FX3, FX4, FX5, and so forth, with headlight and backup light being the FX1 and 2. But you have to remember that FX3 is wired to the, we'll say, firebox light on this guy, and you have to turn it on with button 24. You have to remember that. Not anymore, because we're going to simply pull this out a little bit further, and you're going to see there's a text box right there. I can change this to whatever I want. So in the last presentation, I changed them to class lights because it was already firebox, but I'm just going to write firebox right here, if I can spell. And then now it's changed to firebox light. So I don't have to remember the FX3 is a firebox light turned on and off with button 24. That's all labeled. Now these little green buttons on the side allow us to make any lights momentary or any functions momentary. So if you want to have something turn on and then turn off when you release it, you can do that here. For example, during the weekend, one of the guys at the RPM meet has a remote uncoupling system that he wants to make momentary attached to a lighting output. Guess what? You can do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to uncheck here where I wrote firebox, and what I'll do is when I push it, the firebox is on, and then when I release, the firebox turns off. So for his couplers, he can just push that long enough to uncouple and then release, because according to the instructions, you can't have power applied to this for more than 5 seconds or it burns up, which makes me nervous. I wouldn't want something like that on my model, but the good news is DCC won't allow you to do that. The app does. So you have access to all of this, and if you have multiple locomotives, you can actually go to multi-train, and you can have up to 3 throttles on the screen itself to be able to talk. Now first off, I realized somebody mentioned it the last time. I forgot to mention it, and apparently I forgot to mention it again. This is a free app. You download it on your phone. You can download it right now. The way you're paying for the app, honestly, is part of the proceeds of the decoder actually go to pay for the app and the app development. But you can download the app right now. The only thing is you can't do anything with it until you get a Blunami. You have to have it to connect to a Blunami. Now the other thing is, when it comes to the Bluetooth range, most people are used to headphones, and so they're thinking a range of about 30-40 feet, and then you lose connection. Well, on our YouTube channel, we actually have a video where we ran outside and we took the decoder out there. Now we advertise up to 100 feet, but I went about 145 feet and lost connection. This is using a different protocol. This is using what's called Bluetooth Low Energy. Anybody have smartwatches or Fitbits or anything like that on? It's the same protocol. So the other thing is Bluetooth Low Energy also does what's called a channel hopping technology. And so what it does basically is, instead of, you know, I notice you guys have a bunch of wireless throttles, so you don't have to worry about the Bluetooth interfering with your wireless throttle, because the Bluetooth Low Energy has 37 different channels that it broadcasts over, and it channel hops. So if it starts broadcasting on a channel and there's interference, it immediately stops and moves to another channel to broadcast. And so that's why people can wear their smartwatches around here and it never has any interference. Reason I mention that is I actually had somebody come up to me at one of the shows early on. We'd had this out like 3 months, or 6 months I think it was. And he comes up and says, yeah, our club's outlawed Blunami. I'm like, okay, why did you outlaw Blunami? He said, well, because it was radio interference. I was like, okay. So radio interference, where did this happen at? Was it at a fixed club like this, or was it at a show? Well, it was at a show. Oh, really? Okay, what system you use? NCE? Okay, how many clubs around you were using NCE? Well, 3. Couldn't have been that, it had to be the Blunami. It's like, no, so what happens is that there's channel surfing to make sure there's no interference. You should never run into issue. So I told him, well, if you have anybody with smartwatches, you need to ban those too, because it's the same protocol. He was like, well, I guess I'll go back and talk to him. I'm like, you should do that. Never heard from him again, but who knows. Anyway, it was in the Midwest somewhere. But anyway, so We're going to go back to standard control. Oh, the other thing is you can control any number of locomotives you want that you can handle. So if one person's here and you're open for public and everybody else bailed and you got one person needs to run 3 or 5 trains, whatever, you do it all from the Blunami and let them run. As long as they can keep track of where they are, they can monitor them all. Like I said, there's up to 37 channels, so you can have 37 people stand side by side, all of them, 3, 2, 1. They're all going to blow the whistle. 38, guy number 38 has to wait half a second for his command to have a free channel to then open and send that command. So it's pretty robust, pretty reliable, and a lot more of the modern technology is moving towards a Bluetooth low energy protocol. I heard this weekend somebody was saying a lot of the new remote controls for TVs are going to BLE. So you don't even have to aim it at the TV anymore. But this is just the beginning, folks. So when we go into setup, anybody love programming CVs? Anybody just love that stuff? And it's CVs, you got to calculate the math, you got to figure it out. It's kind of a pain, right? The app does the work for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here to my gear setting down there on the bottom, and you're going to see this list of menu options. And so up at the top here we have a loco nickname. So going back to the scenario, if 5 people have the same locomotive in the club, you can name it, you know, George's whatever, Jim's whatever, Bob's whatever, and it can be the same locomotive, but all of you have your own locomotive, so you know whose locomotive you're getting connected with. The other thing is you can set the DCC address. Right now I have it running under Loco 60, but I'm not using the DCC address, so I can simply change this. So if I type this in as 1460, and you can see it says 1460, when I hit apply, the app automatically knows it's an extended address, changes everything. So so I've changed the address and I'm sitting on the main line. So you don't have to worry about that either. But all these settings allow you to make all your adjustments. So in our Steam decoder, for example, we have 90 whistles to choose from. So if we want to change the whistle, does anybody first off know what CV number to change the whistle with? 163? Nope. And it's CV number 120. And then if I wanted to find the Santa Fe 6-chime whistle, what value? Yeah, they're not going to know. But the app will do that for you. So we're going to go to sound settings. We're going to go to main sounds here. I'm going to scroll up and there's our whistle selection. So we're going to click on it and it pulls up the list of menu and they're all listed by name. So I don't have to find what it is. So we can scroll through the list of all 90 whistles to choose from. And we can find that Santa Fe whistle, which I believe Santa Fe 6 chimes down here. So we're going to click it, but I want to hear it. Well, there's an icon next to that list that you can click so we can instantly hear the sound. We can decide, okay, I like that or I don't like it. We can change the volume. And it's a slider bar. Same whistle now, it's just so much quieter because I changed the volume on it. And you can do that with all the different sound effects. So with 90 whistles, 54 bell recordings, we have 10 exhaust chuffs, 10 air compressors, 8 dynamos, 4 different types of couplers. We have lifting and non-lifting injector. We have 4 different types of fuels. So you have oil burner, wood burner, hand shoveled coal and auger fed coal, all that built into the decoder, including different chuff cadences, including a conventional rod locomotive with 2 cylinders. You have a 3-cylinder, and you can have the set of an articulated locomotive, and the articulated chuffs go in and out of sync with each other at 4 different rates: none, slow, medium, and fast. And this took hours of practice in front of a mirror, so thank you very much. But all of those samples, not counting volumes, I sit there thinking, man, that's a lot of different options. How many options do we have to build a profile? So not counting volume, not counting modifying, changing sound effects or anything like that, I calculated 2.1 billion possible sound combinations with our Steam decoder alone. And that's billion with a B. Because I can have this whistle with any of the 54 bells, with any of the different exhaust chuffs, with any of the different. Now, the reason I point that out is because when it comes to volume control, one of my weaknesses is 1863, the modeling the little 440 Civil War engines. What was one of the things they did not have in 1863? Electric lights. So the sound you're hearing on the steam engine is what's called a dynamo. It's a steam-driven electric generator. And so therefore, in 1863, since they did not have electric lights, I take the dynamo volume and mute it. There's a new profile. Same thing. What else did they not have in 1863? Air brakes. You were close. Air brakes. Dynamic brakes would be diesel, but air brakes. So with air compressors not being on the locomotive, I take my air compressor volume, set it to 0. So there's a new profile. But that 2.1 billion does not count volume control, because I can make one locomotive with the same sound settings, with different volume settings, different equalizer settings, different reverb settings. and they sound very similar but different, all in the locomotive. So you can imagine there's an infinite number. And now all of the selections are easy to be able to done through the app. Lighting effects. We come over here, we can change the different lighting effects. We can make things Mars lights, gyro lights, rotary beacons. But again, you're not sure which lighting output and CV values. And there you click on it and there's the list of all the different lighting effects. Everything's set up through the app.
Christmas light?
Don't quite have that, but I have flashing lights that you can make Christmas lights. There's single flash strobe 1 and single flash strobe 2, so they have different flash rates.
Nice.
So they,
huh? You practice that too?
I didn't practice that one apparently. But you have all those different options. You can make all the lighting directional. You can do anything you want, and that's including ditch lights on this locomotive. So when we look at the P42, I gotta unmute. But when I come in here, I've got it where I turn on my ditch lights, and then as a setting, we hit our air horn, and they start to alternate and flash. And again, these are all settings that you can do in the app. Now, this is the Android version of the app, and I will tell you a couple of little things about it. Number one, it's technically an open beta. It is not complete. You can do everything you want to do with a single locomotive. Right now, the only limitation right now is multi-train running and consisting. And consisting is worth its weight in gold on the app. And I'm going to show you that in just a moment. But what's happening is this is taking so long is because they're redesigning the entire app. So they're making some improvements on it. They're going to finish this, and they're going to update the Apple version to have some of the features. One of the things the Apple does not have is function mapping. So at that point, you still have to go back the old-fashioned way to do CVs, but the Android does have it, and it's coming very, very soon. Let's mute him again. But all your settings are here in the app, and so if you do want to go in and do CVs, you can still do CVs. You can type in a single CV up here. So let's say, for example, I want to read CV8, which is our manufacturer ID. Should be come up as 141. When I hit read, it comes up as 141. Now, the thing is you shouldn't be able to read a CV on the main line, and you can't do it on your DCC system, but I can do it anytime. Anybody use JMRI? How long does it take to read all CVs? Takes a minute or two. I had a funny thing. Customer told me this past week. He said, yeah, I went to JMRI and I read all CVs. I went out and had lunch and read War and Peace and then mowed the lawn and came back and it was done. So all joking aside, it does take a little bit of time. Now, the reason for that is because the way DCC reads a decoder is not the way you expect. It doesn't say, hey, decoder, what's the value of CV29? The decoder says 6. Remember when we were kids, and you guys still do, you remember 20 questions? The answer is yes or no, right? So the DCC system plays a game of 256 questions. Is the value of CV29 0? When the decoder answers no, nothing happens. So the DCC system moves to the next question. Is the value 255? No. Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 4? Is it 5? Is it 6? When the decoder answers yes, the decoder draws current. On your isolated programming track, you have that controlled environment. The DCC system can detect that change in current and says, aha, I have a yes answer, and then displays in your window CV29 equals 6. Now do that over 500 times. And then plus, the other thing is higher the CV value, the longer it takes to get to that answer. And so that's why it takes so long. So I'm building all this up to show you how long it's going to take to read CVs, because I have a button here to read CVs. The Bluetooth module is connected direct to the processor. Read all CVs. Here we go. And I'm done. I've just read all CVs. And that's how fast the communication protocol is with the Bluetooth. And you can go in and, like I said, you can go in and set individual CVs. It has a description of the CV and the CV value. Whoops. One of the features we have is what's called dynamic digital exhaust. And dynamic digital exhaust allows the decoder to read the load on the motor and will adjust the exhaust sound accordingly to make the decoder sound like it's working harder, just like the engineer would if it's coming up a grade. So when you're running on flat level track, like say, for example, the steam locomotive, you'll hear a steady chuff, but then once you encounter that grade, it's going to start working harder to get that up the hill. Well, the dynamic digital exhaust in the Tsunami 2 does take a calibration process. You have to interrogate the power of the motor by setting a couple of CVs while the locomotive is running on flat level track and light. and the decoder will interrogate the motor and say, okay, I'm using this much current, and then I'm using that much current at a higher speed, and then it creates a graph and says, okay, this is my projected speed use. Now, if the decoder needs this much power at this speed, the dynamic processor sees that change and says, aha, and increases the diesel engine RPMs and the intensity, or in the case of the exhaust chuff, the tone and intensity of the exhaust chuff. Now, on the Blunami, it's a simple push of a button. You have to have a little bit of space, and I can do this here because I have these on rollers. Ideally, you don't want to do it on rollers, you want to do it on flat level track, but this will suffice for what we're doing. So I simply push begin calibration. So it's going to set all my CV for momentum to 0. It's going to start moving it at speed step 1. Then it's going to run it at a higher speed, and it's going to interrogate the motor. Then it's going to bring it to a stop. That's just a safety valve. It'll go away in a second.
I'm just going to mute it to make sure that that's happening.
Yeah, no worries. And then it goes in and sets a sensitivity in there to determine how sensitive it's going to be. So now when we run our locomotive with some momentum, you can hear that chuff bark quite heavily as you're accelerating. And then when I cut the throttle, you hear it back off. It's going to do that based on load as well. So we get going at a steady speed. I'm going to put some pressure on the wheel. Oops. I ran it off the rollers. But now I'm going to try to do this while it's running. There we go. But you get the idea. It kind of does that acceleration while you're doing that. So that's one of the things that's built into the app that's easy and quick and fun to do. And then the last thing I'll point out on the app, and there's a lot of other cool things you can do with it, but consist functions. And this is one of the things I want to point out because, like I said, this is worth its weight in gold. Because when you're building a consist running multiple locomotives, we all want to run more trains, more locomotives, better, more trains, more locomotives, more fun, more power, you know. But anyway, what happens is when we're using our DCC system, we have to either build an advanced consist, which involves a lot of CVs, CV19, CV21, 22, 245, 246, and you have to calculate the value based on which functions you want turned on to each individual locomotive. Or you do it the simple way. You set them all to the same address. They run elephant style, nose to tail. And then when you blow the horn, they all blow the horn. So because we know that we don't want the trailing unit to blow the horn, we then go in and set the volume of the trailing unit to 0, because that way it doesn't blow the horn. So that's not necessarily the most realistic way. And then if you want to break them up for whatever reason, you can't do it because they're set to the same address. Then if you do separate, then you have to go back in and change CVs to turn the volume back up again. The other option is when you use the command stations, most of them, you tell the command station, this is my lead unit. So for today's example, I'm going to use 1460 as my lead. And then P42 124 is going to be my trailing unit. And I'm going to disconnect from there. I'm going to connect to them here. And what will happen is then the DCC system basically says, okay, locomotive 1460, move forward, speed step 10, turn on F0, turn on F1, turn on F4. Locomotive 124, move forward, speed step 10. There's something missing. There's no function command sent to the rear because those systems were developed when there was nothing but motor decoders, which meant motor and lights, which the trailing unit typically didn't have lights, especially at that time. We didn't have those little micro LEDs that we can do so many cool things with now. And so what happens is that all these cool functions we're about to show here in the second half, which, oops, I'm running a little longer than I want. What happens is the trailing units never get that command. And so things like braking, dynamic braking, or volume, even mute, for example, doesn't get to the second unit. So that's where advanced consisting comes into play. But it's complicated because you're doing CVs. Now, I have a tutorial on our YouTube channel, webinar number 14, all about consisting. Be sure to watch it. And it'll kind of show you how to build the advanced consist, but the app does it for you. So when I go into my settings again, wait, I got to it's got to read all my P42. Okay, so when I go into my consist functions here, I simply open the map and I tell the decoders which functions do I send to the lead unit, which will be bell, air horn, short horn, dynamic brakes, things like that. Whoops, wrong button. Mid locomotives, it tells me no bell, no air horn, no short horn, but I do want dynamic brakes. I do want my RPM plus and minus, mute, no grade crossing, brakes, things like that. And I go through the checklist and I just decide. The only difference between a mid and a rear unit can be technically the rear headlight and the F13 coupler sound, since that's the one that's coupling onto the locomotive. But you go through and build this profile as you want. So now when you go back in consist, now this is going to be a steam and a diesel, so there's going to be some mismatching here, but it's for the example I've got. But down here on the bottom, there's a chain link. We're simply going to click the chain link. Wait, that's my P42. I want this one. So my chain link, my device can connect up to 4 consists. You can run any number of locomotives in your consist. So if you want to run 13 locomotives in your consist, you can do it. Your memory systems on your DCC systems, what is it, typically 8? Something like that, because it's sending 8 commands out. The other thing about that is it slows the traffic down because it's sending more commands out on your traffic than you need. But anyway, we have 4 consists. We're going to pick C for Charlie. No reason. So now this is my lead unit. We're going to turn off our functions. Now we're going to go over here and we're going to go ahead and put our P42 and we're going to click it on Charlie, and all my functions, all my throttle disappears because it knows it's part of that consist. There's 2 questions here at the end. It says rear loco or middle loco, and this is going to be a rear, and then facing forward or facing rearward. You're done. I've just now consisted those 2 locomotives. So now when I go back over here to my steam locomotive, which is the lead, I'm going to blow my whistle, turn my bell, I'm going to start moving. Whoops, hold on a minute. I got to unmute this guy. So now when I throttle up, you're going to see this guy starting to move. Well, normally you would see it, but you hear the diesel engine notching up as it's working to move. Blow the horn, whistle, ring the bell, everything. Now we're going to come to a stop. And you run your train that way, all the way. Now let's say it's on a turn and I'm ready to go this way now, okay? I'm simply going to, go to my P42, and there's a button there that says make lead. When I click make lead, that's the lead locomotive now. And when I go back to my steam engine, all the throttle is gone. So when I go to my diesel, now when I move forward, my steam locomotive is going to move in reverse. All the functions are there. So we're going to come to the back, come to the end. Now let's say I want to drop the steam engine. Let's say I have a multi-unit consist. I'm dropping the helpers. I just simply uncheck the C on the locomotive respective. We're going to move forward. He's moving forward. I'm going to go back to my consist, and my C is still highlighted because that's still part of the consist. I just have 2 locomotives here to show it off, but that's the thing. So now when I'm moving in reverse, this is still technically the lead of the locomotive of the consist. It's that simple. And when I get to the end, I simply uncheck. Now they're independent locomotives again. That's Blunami. Now Blunami, talk about the cost and the formats right now. So first off, we have our Blue 2200. It's the universal hardwired 6-function version decoder. Retail price on it's $169.95, which represents about $35 price difference between the Tsunami 2 and the Blunami. And for all of that, you get the app and all those features. Like I said, you're getting more than a Tsunami 2. And a couple of dollars of that goes back to pay for the app development. Then we have our large scale, which may or may not be applicable to anybody here. We have our large scale versions, the Blue 4408. Those guys are eating it up because onboard battery power is now a real cheap option now. Because you have the Blunami and a battery, you just need a way to charge battery and you're gold. You're running, you can run your layout. Usually most people's garden railroad aren't much bigger than this. I could be on this side and be running trains over here. It's nice and easy. But anyway, that runs at $255.95, which represents about a $50 price difference between the Tsunami 2 version and the Blunami version. And then our most recent release, which we announced last summer, is our P&P board. That's our drop-in board replacement style for diesels. That one retails at $162.95, which represents about a $35 price difference between them as well. And that has 8 functions, a 2-watt amplifier and 2 amps for the motor and so forth. And it's a nice, easy installation in the diesels. That's what's in this guy over here. Now, I'm not making any official announcements, so read into it what you will, but this is a Rapido PA. If anybody knows what type of decoders Rapido makes, this has a Blunami in it. And I'm not making any announcements, but coming soon, so you want to make sure you're signed up to our newsletter for any, say, big trade shows that might be coming around the corner here in the next few weeks. That might be up in Massachusetts. You'll want to watch for announcements because Blunami is going to get a whole lot easier to install once we see what's in this model. That's everything I've got for Blunami. So I want to get into some operations to help you guys as well. Do you have any questions on Blunami right now that I can field for you guys?
You answered my question with that one.
There you go. Well, what question? I didn't answer any questions. I didn't say anything.
I don't know.
You don't know what I'm talking about.
The application.
There you go.
Oh, I don't know if this is hinted at with that or not, but is there going to be a 21 pin?
There may or may not be with that hint. So see what happens, and we'll see what comes out. But I'm not making any announcements at this moment in time. There's still some things that need to be finished, but we're always looking at different board format options, and so things will be able to expand because the more formats, the idea is it makes it easier for you guys to install decoders in your models and get all the cool benefits of it. And so
I'll be honest, that's one of the reasons I don't have a lot of Blunamis is that when I do DCC installs, 21 pin with a decoder buddy.
Yep, it's a great combination.
My main way to do it.
Yep.
And
so make sure you subscribe to our newsletter.
Oh, does it come in any color but blue? Any other color but blue?
No. I was like, I'm trying to think of a smart guy way to answer that. I failed miserably. My brain failed
I mean,
me.
technically it's white with blue.
Well,
lettering.
the 2200 has white shrink wrap.
Yeah.
The actual PCBs are blue on the Blunami version, and then the Tsunami 2 are purple. There you go.
Actually,
Or it's the other way around. I'm sorry, the other way around. Yes, sir.
Is there a possibility of an 1100 size?
The biggest challenge right now,
I know it's
not
a lot
immediately.
smaller.
The biggest challenge is the Bluetooth chip's about the size of my pinky nail, and then you're talking about a decoder that's about the size of that now I have to find more real estate for. So short answer is not immediately. It's on my radar, but I don't have a time frame.
The biggest concern I have had with it has been because I also, as you probably heard, I upgrade the speakers in mine to the scale sounds that are like.
Yep, JT does good work.
They bear, but they are fitting in exactly with no extra space.
Right.
And I actually ran into that. I had a couple locomotives was getting sound installed on, and we were debating what to use, and we had to at that time stick with the PNEMs because those were the only ones, the 21 pins, because that plus the decoder buddy was the only thing that would fit.
Got it.
With his speaker. And that's even like my little Southern 460. It's got there's a few my small steam engines. I've got like 440s and stuff.
Yep.
That have the 20, like he says, the 1100s because there is
Correct.
no fitting.
We'll go back to what I was talking about with the with my old 1863
Yeah.
references. I have an 1863 General as she lived when she was hijacked, and that has it's really cool. It has frame rails on the side instead of what we're used to, the walkways above the wheels. They're next to the wheels. And so I took a lot of time. I took one of the new Bachmann tooling ones and modified it. It took me about 4 months to do. But I was working on it every night, to be fair. I don't have kids, which is a good, bad thing to have. But I had the time to be able to do it. And so anyway, point being was would push for that as well. But there's some physics on it. And so we may have to do some more research, maybe look at different alternatives, different Bluetooth chips, whatever. So I will say it's probably not on the immediate radar, but it's on the radar to do. I just don't have a time frame.
Well, we gotta have something to put in the Blackstones.
Can I reach you this number?
Yep.
Okay, I got my 5-year-old grandson, so I'm gonna have to.
Oh, got it. No worries.
Okay,
Thanks for
thanks
coming.
a lot.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Yeah, you get my card, you contact me. Just remember remind me where we spoke. As some of you know, I'm a hockey goaltender, so I get hit in the head a lot.
Okay.
So I may not remember everything, but remind me where we spoke and what we talked about, and I'll be able to carry on the conversation further with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I want to show you some cool things about the operations. A lot of people, for example, myself, I'll use me as an example, is I'm not a real railroader. I'm a model railroader. I've never run a real locomotive in my life. And so therefore, there's certain aspects of railroading that we as rail fans and modelers either assume, take for granted, or just don't know anything about. And so the idea is I want to talk a little bit about some of that. So first off, I'm going to jump into steam locomotives. Now, as I mentioned, with steam locomotives, you have your profile. You build your, you select your whistle, you select your bell, all that. You build your profile, and on your diesel decoders, our diesel decoders are grouped by family. And part of the reason is because a diesel sound takes a lot more recording time than, say, the chuff of a steam engine. And so they're grouped by family. So we have EMD, EMD2, and the EMD2 is a second collection of EMD prime movers that are some of the more obscure or lesser used versions. So most of the time you'll have the regular EMD version that'll get you most of what you want. But if you're looking for some of the obscure ones, the EMD2. You can go to our website and see the full list of what prime movers are on which decoder. The other thing is then we go to GE, Alco, and then what I refer to as the lovingly as the land of misfit toys. It's called the Baldwin and Others, because as retailers, we want to condense those part numbers as much as we can. So I have 4 Baldwins, 1 Fairbanks Morse, 1 Galloping Goose, 1 Whitcomb, 1 Genset, and then I have turbines. That shouldn't really take up that many different part numbers. And so what we can do is we can condense those down to the Baldwin and Others. Now each one of those diesel decoders have up to 9 different diesel prime movers loaded into it. You have 44 different air horns, 50 bell recordings, different air compressors to choose from, and more that you can go in and customize the decoder. And you can customize its performance. We're going to talk about that. So you build your profile, you select your sounds, you build your locomotive. Now we're going to run it like the real locomotives. So first thing what I talk about is the easiest thing to implement. What's the first thing we all do when we put our sound decoder on the track? Blow the whistle, right? We want to make that noise, right? So blowing the whistle is something that's even overlooked a lot of times when it comes to operations. In the steam era, whistle communications, whistle signals are the way they communicated with everybody. So they were able to tell what's about to happen. So I'm going to go back to my steam locomotive here for a moment. And so, for example, I don't know if you heard me, I was doing it. That tells everybody I'm about to move in the forward direction. And so therefore I throttle up and start moving. Bring it to a stop. 1 short blast of the whistle says I'm stopped with brake set. So it's safe to get on and off the locomotive. Now when I'm going in reverse, 3 short blasts of the whistle, then I start moving in the reverse direction. So these whistle signals are communications. Now one of the other things that over the years they evolved. If you go to our website, you can see the full list of all the different whistle signals that are used. But they evolved over years. So one of them, when our locomotive is moving, a single long blast of the whistle tells everybody that we're approaching a station. And then, while we're moving, 3 short says we're going to stop. So over the years, that evolved to flagmen protect the rear of the train. So long, stop, and now you bring your train to the stop. Now your flag, once the train stops, your flagman climbs down and starts that mile-long walk behind with his flag to protect for any oncoming traffic. Now, one of the things, and this is where helping operations, one of the things we tend to forget as modelers is the people of railroading. So say, for example, we're entering into the yard. Well, what's the first instinct? We walk over there and we start throwing turnouts to make sure we're aligned to the right switch. Well, who threw those switches? The Flash? Superman? Did he fly off the train, fly all the way in and start lining the switches? So going back to the flagman, for example, if you stop and take water, for example, which is function 16, you bring your train to a stop. On my layout, I have flagmen. And what I did is I took figures, drilled a hole through their hand, took the top half of a straight pin, threw it through there, took some Kleenex, painted it red, glued it to the end of the side of the straight pin, and my layout's foam scenery. So then I drilled into his foot, took the bottom half of the straight pin, stuck it up into his leg, and now I have a flagman that I can stab anywhere in the track that I need. So if I have a car derail, let's say, now I'll bring my train to a stop, then I'll call the flagman, and he put him out to protect against oncoming, because I'm working in dark territory. So I don't have signals. And so I modeled 1978, so I have radios, but I'm still going to use the flagman because it's more fun. Same thing, so I have figures, again, that do the same thing that I have to put in front of every turnout to make sure, and I don't run into closed turnouts because somebody has to walk out off the train to throw the turnout. Now, in CTC scenarios, obviously that's a little different, but when you're entering the yard, that's all in the real world hand controlled. So just a little option. And you can use whistle signals. When you're ready to recall your flagman, depending on which side of the train he is, it'll be 4 or 5 long blasts. And he starts that mile-long walk. He starts that mile-long walk back to the train to get on and ready to go. He gets on. I'm here. He sees it. All right, we're ready to go. And then we start cracking our throttle. and then we turn off the brake, or turn off the bell. So just adding whistle signals alone helps us make our operations of running trains more fun and more enjoyable, because who doesn't like blowing the whistle, right? So the next thing I recommend is adding some momentum. I know it's really a challenge. A lot of people don't like running momentum because I want my train to stop when it stops. Well, we're going to go ahead and set some momentum into this. So we're going to go to speed settings, and we're going to set this up. We're going to put in here a value of 75 for acceleration, and then we're going to put this at a value of 150 for deceleration. And we're going to go ahead and add momentum. So now when I turn my throttle up, you can see that it actually takes a few moments to get going. Trains are big machines. They take a lot of mass to get going. And so when we cut the throttle, you're also allowing that dynamic exhaust time to respond and give that integration. But here's the thing, if you really don't like the momentum, down on the bottom, function 14, and this is on Blunami 2 and Blunami as well. So everything I'm talking about now is Blunami 2 and Blunami. But if you don't want momentum, you can simply hit switcher mode, and you have instant start and stop, because switcher mode bypasses the momentum and then it takes your commanded speed and cuts it into half. The idea behind it is that if you're shunting cars, spotting cars at industry, things like that, you have that instant control that you really want. And so that way you can bypass it. But I recommend adding the automatic is then the train brakes, and the automatic brakes now will work and basically use the freight cars to help distribute the braking effort throughout the entire train. Now this works a little bit differently. The reason it's called automatic is because the engineer, when he's charging the train line, fills the pipe with air. That releases the brakes off the wheels. Now when the engineer does a brake set, what he does is he actually reduces the pressure in the pipe. The brakes now apply gently. You do another reduction and it presses it more, and so gradually you do it. Now our brakes, I will say, are on-off. Because we decided that most model railroaders aren't necessarily know about the gradual braking systems. And the other side of it is you're approaching a signal, let's say, and I hit my brake once, I hit it twice, and it's still coasting. And then you get around the corner and you got the red, oh, did I push it 2 or 3 times? I don't remember. And you don't want to overdo it. So it's simply on-off, and you can feather the brake just like the real engineers do. So the way it works, F11 is our brake application. So that moves my engineer's hand this way to apply the brakes. F12 selects which brake system is active. So F12 off, my hand is on the independent. So when I hit F11, I set the independent brake, and that's the squeal you'll hear. Now when F12 is on, my hand will move to the automatic. Then I grab the air brakes for the automatic for the train, and then when I set, you'll hear the air reduction, and then you'll never hear the squeal. But that's where we have a product called SoundTraxx. And SoundTraxx you can put in all the freight cars or passenger cars or whatever, and then using the DCC command, it will then squeal the cars as if they're bringing the train to a stop. So we're going to show you here. So, and I think I have some brake rate set. I'm going to quickly double check. Nope, I don't. So I want to do then I want to do crap, wrong button. I'm doing this upside down, sorry. Okay, and I'm just doing that because I know it. I know the numbers off the top of my head. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna set our brakes. So we're gonna get moving. But now I'm gonna set my brakes. And you can hear the squeal as the locomotive comes to a stop. Now my throttle is still way up, but the locomotive comes to a stop, and as soon as it stops, the squeal stops. We can release the brakes. You hear the air bail off, and then now my locomotive starts going again. We're gonna bring it to a stop, set our brakes. Now, when I turn on F12, that's gonna turn on the automatic. And now what you're gonna do is you're gonna hear the air compressor start cycling. You hear the air reduction, you're gonna hear the air compressor start cycling as it works to charge the train line. In the real world, this will take anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes. In model train time, it takes 30 seconds. So now when I'm going to start moving, I'm going to increase my throttle. Notice my locomotive is not moving. I can release the brakes. And now my locomotive will start going out once I release. And then when I set the brakes, you'll hear that air reduction, and you're not hearing the squealing now because I'm in automatic train brake mode, and so the sound cars would actually be doing the squealing. So this is one of the biggest reasons why you would want the advanced consist or consisting through the Blunami, is because now that braking effort would be distributed with all of your different locomotives in the consist. And this really helps bring your locomotive to life. Now when it comes to diesels, the diesels work exactly the same way when it comes to braking. I recommend finding some momentum values you like and that you can live with, and be consistent, match everything to the same. And the reason for that is because if you're running the real locomotive, you're sitting in the seat, you can feel the train, you know what it's doing, and so you can do your sets and adjustments to the throttle as needed to keep your train running. But we're sitting next to it, so we can't feel what's happening. So what it is if you have consistent function or consistent momentum settings, and you know what that is, with some practice with your settings and with the brake rates, you'll be able to stop your train at the exact same spot every single time. Now when it comes to diesels, the diesels have the same. They have our independent brakes and they have our automatic brakes as well, but now they also have a third braking rate called dynamic braking. Dynamic braking takes the traction motors on the wheels, turns them into electrical generators. That electrical energy that's generated by those motors is now sent up to a resistor grid that is dissipated through the heat and the fans and so forth. But what it does is it basically, that electromechanical resistance of the wheels turning actually is what slows the train down and helps keep it under control so that they can save the brakes. So when we're running our locomotive, let's unmute this guy. We'll get him going here. Now the way the dynamic brakes work in our Tsunami 2 and Blunami is that, I'm going to make sure I have this CV set, sorry. Okay, so the way it works is that the dynamic brake becomes, when you're going lower than speed step 10, it's an on-off function, and you'll hear the sound. Now the dynamic brake application can also affect the prime mover. So right now you're hearing the diesel engine notched up a little bit because it's running, and the prime mover will either notch down to idle, because typically if you're running the brakes, you're also not throttling up. And so most of the locomotives will go to idle, but there are some instances, for example, some of the early Alco and GE locomotives would notch up to notch 8 because the dynamic brake fan was mechanically driven off the crankshaft. So you needed to maximize that fan airflow across those resistor grids to keep them cool. The Missouri Pacific, which is the railroad I personally model, and then the Southern Pacific, their dynamic brake equipped locomotives would go to notch 4. And the reason was to make sure that the main generator was generating enough energy to keep the traction motor blowers running and keep them cool, keep them from overheating. And so when you're going below speed step 10, when you press the F4, the dynamic brake application here, wait, what's this weird? When you do you hear the dynamic brake fan kick on and you'll hear the prime mover drop to idle. And what that's doing is that's now showing you that we're in dynamic brake mode. But because I'm going faster than speed step 10, when I press it a second time, you hear that dynamic brake high. Now that actually will implement a third braking rate if you set it as such. CV116 determines the dynamic braking rate. Now dynamic brakes will never actually stop the locomotive. It'll bring it down to a very slow speed, about 7 to 10 miles an hour. So once the locomotive gets down to that, it'll maintain that speed until we turn it off. So basically F4 becomes a 4-button press. You have on low, on high, on low, off. So when I press it again, you hear those fans go back down, and then now we turn them off. And it can affect the speed. I was running a consist of mine at the La Mesa Train Club down in Southern California, and I was using dynamic brakes with the dynamic brake rates. And somebody came over to me, "Why are you running so slow?" I said, "Because I'm using dynamic brakes. I'm coming down grade. I'm coming from Tehachapi down to Caliente. If you guys have never been there, that's a whole story of the building. So you're coming down that whole grade." And they said, "Well, you need to go faster. You got 3 trains behind you held up." I'm like, "Okay, fine." So I stayed in dynamic brake low the whole time, but I was moving a little faster just to keep the traffic going.
On my diesels, I use the dynamic brakes when I'm coming down the hill.
Perfect.
Either around there or on that
I
side.
love it. So these are just some of the features that are built into it. But again, you know, one of the things I always recommend is, you know, when you're doing all this, adding in just a little bit, whistle signals, momentum, braking, that makes your operations of your railroad more interactive, more fun. Turning a knob and walking along and watching with it is great. And if that's what you want to do, great, more power to you. You have that ability. But what I want to do is show you some of the cool things and compare it to the features we give you to how the real railroads run, so that you can decide how much or how little of that you want to use for yourself. Because this is fun. We do this for a hobby. The good news is nobody's going to get fired or nobody's going to get reprimanded if they derail a train. We just put it back on the track and move on with our lives. And so we want to enjoy it. We want to have fun. There was a movie many years ago, I think it was the early 2000s, called Mystery Alaska, if anybody's heard it. It's a bunch of ragtag hockey guys in Alaska that were somehow forced to play against the New York Hockey Rangers. There was a scene where Burt Reynolds was the coach, and I forget the coach's name now, but he was walking through the town, and this kid was swatting at a puck, but the stick was up like this, where he was only touching the ice with the heel of his stick. And so he came over and he said, "Here, hold it this way." So he got the whole blade of his stick on the ice. He said, "You paid for the whole stick, you might as well use it." And so my point being is, you guys want the best sound decoders out there. And so it's up to you guys to decide how much or how little of it you want to use. But the good thing is there's so many features, and I'm just touching the surface. I mean, on our P42 here, we have HEP mode, head-end power. So I can hit function 16, and my head-end power mode will run on the unit that is designed for the head-end power to power the passenger train. We haven't even talked about those type of things, and a lot of those type of videos and stuff you can find on our YouTube channel. But my goal is to show you guys a lot of the cool stuff, maybe open the eyes. You apparently seem to use a lot of the functions, which is cool.
I even have the steam generator sounds on
There
my
you
old
go.
diesels, so.
There you go. So, but anyway, the point is to show you guys what you can do. It's up to you. And you have my card here, so if you have any questions, you have any problems, you want to dive deeper into how to set up your models the way you want to, give me a call, give me an email, remind me where we spoke, and I'll be happy to talk to you guys until you're ready and you got what you need. Our user's guide is fully detailed and written in English terms so that everybody can understand. That's one of the things we do. We give it to somebody in our office that's not a train related and say, "Here, make sure this makes sense." If you have any questions, ask us. And they usually come back with several things here and there, but that's one of our measuring sticks, because if one of the gals that's marketing or whatever that has no idea what we do, obviously marketing's not the right example, but you know what I mean, who has no idea what we do and they can understand the manual, then we figure it's pretty good. And so, but unfortunately most of us are guys, we throw the manual away. We use the manual. It is very informative. If nothing else, start with chapter 1. Chapter 1 explains all the features we talked about and what the sounds are and what you're doing, and then the rest of the text will tell you how to do it. So with that, I'll open the floor, ask questions. If you guys have anything, I'll be here for a little while, answer any questions. Yes, sir.
So I just to throw in on the switching mode you were talking about, what I've actually found that I like for switching is I don't go into switching mode, but I'll set it at like 10, and then I just use the brakes and the change of direction to go back and forth. And I'm no longer sitting there changing speed up and down, and down. It's just brakes and change of direction, which makes the switching 1,000 times easier.
Absolutely. The only thing I'll tell you is on the Blunami, you do have to bring the throttle down to change directions.
Okay.
But I get what you're going at. But if you're using the DCC system, then it doesn't matter.
Couple questions too.
Sure.
So on the Blunami consisting, do you have the ability for each locomotive in the consist to enable or disable automatic sounds? So like
that's a setting in the decoder.
Okay.
That doesn't go. That's the setting like in the CV. So the consist for automatic sounds would be CV 1.247.
Right.
The app that I'm aware of currently doesn't address 247. But we're not programming CVs. What we're doing is we're sending commands to each locomotive in the consist.
Right, because like right now my steam engines have automatic bell, they have the stop, the reverse, and the forward whistles all automatic.
So,
and which if I put them in a consist is not a huge issue because the engineers were probably communicating with whistles anyway.
Right.
But on my diesels, I have to turn off, or none of them are programmed to have an automatic horn because I never know in a consist which one is necessarily going to be doing those automatic sounds.
Right.
I can do it. I either do it through JMRI, which I can control it through there, or I do it. I have the TCS throttle, which I can't adjust it through here.
Okay.
So that's if that was something, one of those features, so that you could adjust whether or not the automatic horn or the automatic bell comes on.
Right. It's stored in CV247 to be able to do that. So in 247 for the lead unit, you would say yes, do all the automatic sounds, and trailing units you don't. But unfortunately, the Blunami consisting is not a true advanced consist.
Gotcha.
It's basically a basic consist, but it's adding functions into those commands to each locomotive.
It probably functions similar to how this does.
Right, because on mine, when I've been using Tsunami 2, I use CVs 23 and 24 as well, which are consist momentum. So I figure if I'm running multiple units, then I'm pulling a heavier train with those train. And so right now it doesn't do it, but it's on my wish list. But the app it's software. We can always change it.
Yeah. The other thing, just to put this out there, when I thought about like what I would like to see for the next phase of DCC and new things, is to actually have it. I know this is a bit of a step back, but operate like DC in that when the train is going uphill, as opposed to acting like essentially a cruise control, like it does now, that the train actually would slow down and you would have to throttle up to maintain your speed. Like that to me would be the next level of
just turn off back EMF
of interaction.
But if you turn off back EMF, you lose the dynamic exhaust.
Correct. Yeah.
So what you can do is probably go in and change some of the settings so that you don't get that 100% compensation.
Yeah.
So I think it's CV212, I believe.
Well, the problem is on some of these I have to have back EMF or the locomotive doesn't run right.
Right. But what I was saying is you can set it up in such a way that back EMF cuts out at a certain speed step too. So just play with it, tweak it. Can't break it by changing CVs. If you could, we didn't do our job very well. So if you don't like it, reset it and start over. But that's where I would recommend you go.
Yeah, just a thought for future stuff.
Anything else? You guys have any questions? You ready to come over here and take the engineer's test?
So on the sound card, is there a Blunami option for that?
At this moment, no.
Okay.
It would be on my radar. Because once you start implementing this with SoundCar, that
right now I have a few cabooses with sound cards in them, and are actually even like my LCAT. That's the Walter set that came with sound cards, and some of them typically I will add them into the consist on this. Or if I'm running it through JMRI, I'll add them into the consist address. But right now, that's what I have to do with if I have my sound car stuff.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
Cool.
I haven't really looked into the sound cards too much. Do they have generator sounds
Yep.
as well? Okay.
They do.
Yeah, they have you can either make it an onboard generator or a refrigeration unit. Or it's the same sound, but you can put it as either of those. And so you can have it where it turns on all the time and runs constantly, or you can have it cycle, and then you can determine the probability of how often it cycles. So like a refrigeration unit, if you're modeling, say Florida in the summer or Arizona in the summer versus Maine in the winter. So.
And like maybe an ATP generator? Or would that be
it would be similar to that, but it would still be the same sound.
Yeah.
HEP generator typically comes out of the locomotive.
Well, this is more for a business train. It's got a specific bar.
Okay. I know kind of like what the UP has, where they have their it would be a very light version of that. But from my understanding, I think the 2066 actually has an EMD 567 in it, so I'm just going to put an Econami in mine.
Okay.
And then just use that and just turn it on and off and let it run and idle. That's what I'm planning to do when I build one.
Okay.
Okay?
I went ahead and put
Okay. Well, I'm going to say, for you guys watching on the camera, thanks for watching. Hopefully this was helpful for you. If you guys have any questions or anything, reach out to us at SoundTraxx. We are here to help you. So give us a call. We're modelers ourselves. We want to help you enjoy your hobby. So feel free to reach out to us. We are very accessible Monday through Friday, 9 to 5:30 Mountain Standard Time. Give us a call, either myself or Norman. We'll be happy to help answer any questions for you guys. Thanks.